I'm very pleased to be joined by Emma Cariaga, who heads up British Land's development at Canada Water. Hi, Emma.
Hello.
So this month we're talking about healthy cities, and the pandemic has obviously put health and well-being right at the forefront of people's minds. What's your take on what this means for the real estate industry and the role that real estate needs to play?
Well, I think it's a bit early to be making crystal ball predictions, but I think having had almost a year of experiencing working and living in a pandemic, it wouldn't be fair to say there aren't going to be some lasting consequences. The trick will be to try and pick out the good ones and hopefully leave some of the more ghastly experiences behind us. But so some change, but I think it's a bit too soon to be saying exactly what and exactly when.
When it comes to the health agenda, has anything changed for you in the Canada Water development, or can you just tell me a bit about your approach to this for the master plan more broadly?
Sure. So, look, we have the privilege of bringing forward a brand new urban centre for London. The kind of the privilege, but also the responsibility, I think, to make sure that it's a piece of city that meets the needs of people today and as it can tries to envisage and respond to how people will want to live and work in the future. Health and well-being has been a consistent theme in our thinking and frankly across the built environment for the last few years, and I think COVID has merely accelerated that. We're very lucky that at Canada Water we have 53 acres, which is a phenomenal scale of real estate to play with, but we also have 130 acres of open space on our doorstep. And I think if you asked yourself what kind of place, now you know what life is like through a pandemic, you want to live at or where you want to work, it's a place surrounded by open space and parks, putting public realm at the heart of how you live your life. And we've got the opportunity to do that at Canada Water in much greater degrees, I think, than probably any other opportunity in London. Really, it's a very special place.
Yeah, and are there specific initiatives that you've been working on with Southwark Council around health and well-being for residents in this particular area of London?
We have, I mean, they are a London borough which has its own health and well-being challenges. I think childhood obesity is a significant problem for the local community, and so as a town centre we need to be doing a responsible thing to ensure that we encourage active lifestyles, and the focus on parks and open spaces has been almost more important than the design of the buildings. How are people going to want to spend their free time? Have we got spaces that will be attractive to young people as well as workers in their lunchtime, right through to older people who equally want a town centre to respond to them? So a range of spaces with different facilities is really important. I think if you look at the pandemic over the last year, I certainly know my well-being was better in lockdown 1 than it is in lockdown 3, and that's because the sun was shining last year, and it is a bit today, but by and large it's not quite the same experience, is it? So having leisure opportunities that offer inside for different times of the year. We're delivering a brand new leisure centre with a 25-metre pool and badminton courts and sports centres to try and ensure that we've got facilities for people to do when the weather's not quite so good. Interesting perspective for the older generation. We did quite a lot of listening in developing our master plan to different groups, and certainly some of the older community were very keen to see the town centre come forward, but in losing the covered shopping mall that they all love and hate in equal measure, they wanted to make sure that the new high street and the new spaces had some covered areas. So we know we want to be out in streets and spaces, but that sort of that essence of shelter was important for the well-being of certain generations. So different responses for different groups, and that's really, I think, with a mission to making sure that Canada Water's really inclusive and is able to be a place for young and old, and I think that's what I want to live in going forward. I think we all want to work in an environment that's full of different people, of different ages, coming and going at different times. But to do that, you have to really ensure you've got a broad range of things for them to do, and catering, I suppose, for quite a range of different needs.
It's always so interesting to hear what comes out of the community engagement process. Was there anything that you found particularly surprising?
I think there's always surprises, and we had a lot of support for this. We've engaged on the master plan for over 5 years and tried a range of different means of engaging different groups. Probably one of the most successful and memorable ones for me was we have a social enterprise on the site known as the Paper Garden, and their modus operandi has been to try and ensure that young people in the area have a say in how the public realm is going to be delivered going forward, so it meets their needs. And they organised an event bringing together young people, but also older people who had lived in that area and knew part of the site when it was still orchards. And they told stories together about what their life was like for the older people at the time compared with the younger people's experience of the area today. And they made jam together, and it was just a really interesting but memorable way of getting generations to come together and impart their stories that we can hopefully replicate or celebrate in the master plan. And that was my favourite.
Oh, amazing. And sustainability as a word means slightly different things to different people, but in terms of the kind of economic, social and environmental sustainability piece for Canada Water, is the healthy cities agenda, does that sit as part of that for you?
It does, and no one should be designing a new piece of city evermore or forevermore without having all facets of sustainability as part of their vision. We will meet, very stretching environmental targets on all the buildings that are delivered at Canada Water, and we have a reasonably new corporate sustainability set of targets and strategy that we will meet. On the social side, I think we've been conscious of making sure that we are knitting a new bit of city into an existing community. And so, although we got a relatively blank sheet of paper, what's been important to really ensure we have trust and confidence of that local community is make sure that this development is going to be a positive force for them. So creating job opportunities, ensuring it improves some of their childhood obesity statistics that I mentioned earlier, means that we need to make our pledge to that community about what we can do that will be for the existing community today, as well as the community which evolves over time. So we have set out a charter which binds us to commitments, and then an agreement that we will check in on our progress over the 10 to 12 years of the delivery of Canada Water to make sure that we don't wait till the end to say, well, did we do a good job? It's important that at core parts of the development process, we ask ourselves and our stakeholders, have we created meaningful jobs for local people as part of this, not just during construction, but end state jobs as well as part of our skills vision for Canada Water? Are there meaningful improvements in people's health outcomes through the routes and spaces and parks and facilities that we've been offering? And if not, how do we recalibrate the remaining parts of the master plan so that we intervene and ensure that those outcomes are better ones? So sustainability runs through the heart of it, but we don't see it as a strategy that then gets determined at the end of the job. It's quite an iterative process development, and so we see it as a bit of an incremental but a phased assessment right the way through the 10 to 12 years of delivery.
That's really interesting, and it actually answers partly my next question, which was going to be about the future. And it's obviously a 15-year project, and I'm interested to see whether you think resident needs, how resident needs might change over those 15 years, although I know you said at the beginning we obviously haven't got a crystal ball, but how the development will adapt to meet those needs in the future.
Well, I haven't got a crystal ball. If you've got one, you've got to tell me how you think. But I certainly, from my own experience and from customers that we speak to, they have an emerging view as to how they expect to be working in the future, and the office and the future of the office is clearly at the forefront of everyone's minds. Our view is that the purpose of an office will prevail, but I think there will be undoubtedly some changes to the frequency with which we all come to the office, and the need to come to the office. So what you create for them has to be amazing. You have to really ensure that you're coming to meet all those colleagues, and you're really working in an environment that's conducive to getting the best out of you. So for creators of real estate, like we will at Canada Water, thinking about how people collaborate at their best, creating spaces that are quite dynamic and allow people to come together for a big town hall, but equally, could be repurposed very quickly for different purposes. So much more resilient, adaptable buildings, I think, will be what you'll see in the commercial part of Canada Water. For the high street, I think retail has been, through a major change, and that's not finished yet. And so we're delivering a new high street at Canada Water that has got to make sure that the shops that are being created on the ground floor of buildings could be a coffee shop in the morning, they could be a co-working space in the afternoon, and they could be a yoga cookery facility in the evening. So that inherent resilience, I think, to get greater intensity of use out of our high streets, we think is important. Much harder to do retrospectively, but we're starting from this blank sheet, so I think we can achieve that. And from a residential point of view, well, we all know how important open space has been when we're all deprived of it. So we know that balconies in apartment blocks need to be purposeful, spaces designed within those homes need to allow for home working, and open spaces and parks at the Canada Water Town Centre need to be, capable of accommodating people who might be living but also working from home. So lots of, I suppose, themes around inbuilt resilience and allowing for buildings to be much more disruptable, perhaps than they have been, and we've got to stop thinking about buildings as having a mono use and anticipate them to be multiple things, often perhaps at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at life cycle of buildings and places, at the day level, but also throughout the year. And you've touched on lots of the themes that we're going to be covering in the coming months for our different future fundamental themes. So that ties in really nicely. It's been so interesting to hear what you've got going on at Canada Water. Thank you, Emma.